on. Oh, I could hear it immediately. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to and open the August 25th meeting of Chico Unified School District Board of Education. We are going to retire into closed session, and I'd like to know if anyone would like to comment on closed session. Seeing no one, we will retire into closed session. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the open session of the August 25th Board of Education meeting. The board has been in closed session, and there is no action to report. We're going to start with the flag salute, of course. If you could stand and join us in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And this is our first meeting at the new Marigold facility. What a fantastic accommodation, and thank you to everyone that voted yes on the bond measures that provided us with the funds to build this school. It is just amazing, and our kiddos, I'm sure, are enjoying the new facility this year. Okay, next is an update on, oh no, that was this, excuse me. Yes, student reports.
Well, it is really exciting to be back in school. We have a week and a few days under our belt here. And one of the things that we talked about in the spring was how to transition back into school and how to make our students comfortable coming back to school after they had had 18 months of different types of education. So we have a treat for you tonight. We have some absolutely fabulous junior high school students here to tell you about how they prepared and how they prepared others for the start of school. And I'd like to introduce Mr. Shepard, who's going to introduce our web students.
Thank you, Superintendent Staley. You're not here to listen to me. Let's go ahead and invite the students up to the podium. They can introduce themselves and tell us all about the last couple of weeks. Come on up.
Hello, Chico Unified staff, board, and families. My name is Riley Carter. I'm a web leader at Marsh Junior High this year. And as well as being in web, I'm in leadership. I joined web as an opportunity to improve my leadership skills and leave a positive impact on the school that I love. This is harder than I thought it'd be, just for the record. My favorite part of web is being able to see all the sixth graders on the first day of school. Especially the ones I got to make a bond with through the web experience. It was a lot of fun meeting new people on the first day and during the web orientation. It's really cool to see kids around campus as the year continues. It meant a lot that they're comfortable enough to come up and say hi to myself and other web leaders. It was a lot of fun going into a classroom with myself and my partner and a group of sixth graders to cement a positive impact through games and conversations. We can all remember what it is like moving schools, let alone just finishing 5th grade. This experience meant a lot to me as a 6th grader, and this was another reason for me joining web. Thank you again for letting us create an environment where everybody belongs.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brooklyn Van Dyke. I'm an 8th grader at Marsh Junior High School, and I have the honor to participate and be a web leader at Marsh this year. This was very personal to me. When I was in 6th grade, I attended web orientation with 0 friends, knowing nothing, coming from a school with about 11 kids in my class. And I left that same orientation now having friends and excited and feeling socially and academically ready for the year. It was such an amazing experience to repay what was done for me in that stage of my school career, and to be able to positively impact students and support them in the best way I know how through our amazing school that I know will do the same. I know our 10 hours of training was worth it to all of us, seeing these 6th grade students in classrooms with only students themselves, learning, laughing, making friends, and most importantly, having fun. Thank you all for having us speak tonight and being a part of something this wonderful.
Hello, my name is Sophia Dorcelis, and I'm a web leader at Chico Junior High School. I remember coming to 6th grade, and I was very nervous coming from a school who overall, we were all very close, but the idea of meeting new people, going to a new school, switching classes was just terrifying. So when we came here to the web orientation, I was very nervous and just really eager to just see how it was. And when I met my web leaders, they were all very kind to me, and it was a great example of what I wanted to be like when I was in 8th grade. And now, 3 years later, I came to 8th grade knowing that I wanted to be a web leader and knowing that I wanted to help other 6th graders the same way my web leaders helped me, and being able to conversate with them and make bonds. And now it was their first day of school, and they were all super comfortable, super excited. And I just know that me and all the other web leaders are very proud, and we worked very hard to help them all feel super comfortable at school. And I really hope that we did.
My name is Faith Roberts, also at Chico Junior, and I'm gonna talk about training. So, as web leaders, we have made it a priority to help our 6th graders feel safe, loved, and prepared for school. We had web training so that we were prepared to prepare them. It was fun because we got to play games and design posters that would greet them, and then the next day got to play those games with them and wave those signs as we greeted them at the door. And I would like to thank Mr. Caldera and Mrs. Huss for making our web possible, but also the school board for making it possible for not only our school, but all those other schools.
Hello, I am Taylor Shulkin.
And I am Ashlyn.
And we are both web leaders from Bidwell Junior High. And web is all about helping the new 6th grade students feel welcome at a big new school.
As we know, there are many different types of kids with all different likes and interests.
During our web training, we were trained to do certain activities that we would be doing with our 6th graders on Web Orientation Day.
At orientation, there were some groups of 6th graders who were quiet while others were louder.
We chose to be web leaders because we remember what it was like in 6th grade being a scared new student at a big new school. And we also decided to be web leaders because we wanted to help the new students so that they could love Bidwell as much as we do.
We know that coming from an elementary school with only one teacher to having 6 is a big change that takes time to get used to.
That's why we're here. That's what web is all about. Thank you.
I just want to thank all of our students for being here tonight. It is hard to talk in front of an adult audience and also know that it's being broadcast out there, and each one of you were absolutely fabulous. And my request of you is finish your education, keep doing the great things you're doing, keep welcoming people, and go into education. We need people like you to be teachers and administrators and superintendents or board members. So keep going. And we will not make you stay. You can go ahead and go if you would like, but you're welcome to stay as well. And I don't know if the board has anything they want to say.
Other than just, I would encourage, as the superintendent did, to stay involved with education after you've decided on your course of education after you graduate from high school. High school is just the jumping off point. There's many deep pools, many deep pools out there for you to jump into after high school, but you'll do great. Swim and enjoy the heck out of all of the challenges that are ahead of you, and then come back and become teachers for the next generation. Thank you.
And as they are exiting, I'm going to come up and start the superintendent's report. Each meeting when we're in session, we give a superintendent's award to different members, community members, classified, certificated, but typically we do not recognize district office administrators. And I am going to break with tradition tonight. As was announced at our last board meeting, our assistant superintendent for business is moving to San Mateo County. And I cannot even begin to tell you how much Mr. Bultema has done for Chico Unified. I can't tell you how much we're going to miss his leadership and how we're going to miss him as a person. But what I can tell you is some of the things that he has done during his tenure in Chico Unified. Kevin oversees our budget as well as the very diverse business division, which includes fiscal services, payroll, nutrition services, facilities, and maintenance operations and transportation. As many of you are aware, as a district, we've faced challenges over the years. We have certainly had budgetary challenges. We have had challenges at the bargaining table, and we have had challenges maintaining our facilities. Kevin was instrumental in ensuring that we got and maintained a sound budget, because he is Mr. We absolutely will not deficit spend. That has now been ingrained in my brain. He has just an innate ability to build trusting relationships. He's very honest and direct, and people trust him and bond with him, and that certainly has helped us in our relationships with the community, as well as with our union relationships. And he's very clear in articulating our 3 key budget priorities: student programs, employee compensation, and balanced budget. And that has worked so well for us. So you have taught me a lot, and those 3 things will be there. But of lasting impact, Kevin is the reason that our bond came to be. He sold all of us on the idea that we could do it, and really went out and led us in convincing our community that it was needed and that we would spend the dollars wisely. And as this building is an example, we've done that. And if you look across the district, we've had many, many new facilities built, and every single campus in our district has been touched by the Measure K, Measure E, or Measure A dollars. Everyone has had renovations, and there are still major renovations to come to our sites. So while you're leaving us, please know you've had a lasting impact, and we are forever grateful. And for that, I'll give you a piece of paper.
I'd like to add one thing to what Kelly just said, Kevin. You said something one time at a meeting at the district office that has stuck with me, and it was probably 3-4 years ago. And we were talking about deficit spending and getting out of that, and what would we do with the excess money if we got out of that. And you said something that let me know where your heart has always been, and that was, if we aren't putting the money out there to educate kids and getting it as close to the classrooms as we possibly can, we're not doing our job with our assets. And I appreciated that your number 1 priority was the kids in the classroom. Thank you.
I'd like to say something too. So in the dark ages, when we would have conferences with our union, and Kevin still worked for the county, and I'm sure this Kevin can remember that, a lot of members of the union would not believe our numbers. They thought we were fudging. Well, why couldn't we just move one money pile over to another money pile? And so the skill that Kevin had was that he could clarify and be believed that the numbers he was presenting were real. And so, as much as I like to harass Kevin, I am going to miss that punching bag. But as much as I like to do that, I think that's been an incredibly important asset to the district, that when we say this is the number, it's real. So thank you, Kevin.
I'd like to
Yes,
add
Member
to-
Dalby?
I'd like to add to this as well, because I didn't know Kevin very well before joining the school board. This is my 9th year as a person of this district, which is very exciting. I started teaching here in 2013, and I can tell you, teachers in the trenches, yeah, it's a special year. I can tell you, a lot of us teachers in the trenches, working on the day-to-day, focused on our students, we don't really understand the total inner workings, except for when we get a chance to hear, collaborate with our union representatives and our site reps. And those first couple of years here were tumultuous, and it was interesting that there was a shift, noticeably, in our culture. And I just want to acknowledge that, and also apologize for not realizing that you had a big role to play in that. And I didn't know that until I joined the school board. So thank you for all that you've done in your time here with Chico Unified. And I think that you're leaving us in a good way, and we'll make sure that your work has continued. So thank you.
Yes, Mr. Landau?
Thank you. I know we're also looking for someone to take Kevin's place, and that's going to be a hard thing to do. The thing that I was always talking about you, Kevin, is that you are both clearly an expert at what you do, and you're so humble and calm about it. Like you walk board members who may or may not know anything about budgets through this. You can get along with the teachers union. You're an excellent manager. That's a rare combination to have someone who's so good with the people side and the money side as well. I've worked with a lot of CBOs, and you're far and away the best. So wish you a lot of luck. And I don't know how we are going to fill your shoes, frankly, but we'll try.
So I'll just want to thank the board and the Chico community. This was always my dream job, was to work here at Chico. And people may or may not know, at one point when I started in education, finance, I went to the CBO that was at Chico Unified and asked him at the time, how do I get your job in 10 years? And it turned out it was almost 10 years to the date that I actually got the opportunity to do the job. So I love Chico, my family's here. My grandmother was a teacher at Chico Unified, so I'm just really thankful for the opportunity, so thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. That concludes your report. Okay. The next is number 6, announcements. Are there any announcements? Yes, Ms. Dalby.
I have 2 announcements. Take this time to wear my hat as a rep from Butte Environmental Council. Tomorrow, the Butte Environmental Council is holding a community forum. It will be downtown at Bidwell Bowl Amphitheater near Children's Park. This free forum for the community is about wildfire, climate, and our future. We'll have a panel of experts speaking on their different parts of wildfire and how it affects our community, and how we can become a more resilient community moving forward. The second announcement is that the registration for the 34th annual Bidwell Park and Chico Creeks cleanup is now underway. This is the 34th year of doing this cleanup with Butte Environmental Council and the City of Chico. Last year it turned into a 2-day event. This year it's 2 days again, September 18th and 19th. Last year, with over 550 volunteers, we cleaned up over 21 tons of waste from our parks and creeks. And so we are hoping to have just as good or better turnout this year, so please spread the word, and all the information can be found on our Butte Environmental Council social media pages, and also on our website.
Thank you. Any other announcements, board? Okay, if there are no further announcements, we'll move to items from the floor. I believe we have one speaker.
We do have one speaker notification. While it didn't come in our normal speaker card format, there's indication this person wanted to speak in person. However, I don't think Brent McGuire is not here, so that's the only one we have.
Yeah, for just an FYI for the board, there is a email to the board from Mr. McGuire on our communications link.
That email was also linked as public comment, so it is available for the public to view as well.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Mr. Hanlon, negotiations update.
I have nothing new to report. Being the first week of school last week, we will not be entering into negotiations until later in September, but I see Mr. Moretti is stepping up to the microphone. He may want to share some other things too.
I think we're meeting September 9th, and so we'll be doing that. And we'll also be meeting this Friday, so we're looking at, as we see what numbers come in student-wise, looking at compensation, and we're looking at another multi-year, if it's feasible, another multi-year compensation deal that'll take care of me and Jim until we retire.
Okay, this is not an action item, so it was just for comments. On the consent calendar, is there anybody that would like to pull? Yes, Dr. Kaiser.
I want to pull 4.2.
4.2. Anything else? Excuse me while I get... Okay. Any other?
I believe we'll need to pull 1.1 due to Caitlin's absence at the last.
Oh, yes, thank you. 1.1 as well, the minutes. Because of your absence. Okay. Anything else? Okay, all those in favor of approving the consent calendar with the exception of 1.1 and 4.2? We do not.
I move the approval of the consent calendar minus the two items that were pulled, 1.1 and 4.2.
Thank you,
second.
Mr. Tennis. And we have a motion from Mr. Tennis and a second from Dr. Kaiser. Now, all those in favor, it's going to be voice vote.
Roll call. Dalby, aye.
Thank you.
Kaiser, aye.
Tennis, aye.
Lando, aye.
Robinson, aye. Okay, 1.1 is the first one in order, and we've pulled out because Ms. Dalby was not present for the, let's see, there's two dates on that. Were you absent for both dates?
Just the August 4th meeting.
Just which one?
August 4th?
Okay, thank you. So we need to approve the other one. I don't know why my two agendas are fighting with me. Yes, a motion to approve the July 21st.
I so move.
The motion and a second to approve the July 21st final minutes. Yes, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Approved 5-0. And then the final minutes for the 8-4 meeting. I need a motion.
I move acceptance of those minutes.
Mr. Landau has moved approval. Do I have
I
a second?
second.
Mr. Tennis has spoken first and will
Okay.
second. I can't see Erica. If she needs it,
She's trying to see you too.
Oh, okay. Okay. All those in favor, we're going to do we'll do
Voice should be fine, right?
a voice vote because Caitlin needs to abstain. Ms. Dalby? Huh? Yeah. Ms. Dalby?
I abstain.
Dr. Kaiser?
I vote yes.
Mr.
Tennis, aye.
Mr. Lando?
Lando, aye.
Robinson, aye. Okay. Okay, educational services, oh, that was in the consent calendar. Let me get to where I need to be.
We
Discussion
need to
act-
go to 4.2.
Oh, 4.2. Dr. Kaiser, I am so sorry. Yes, 4.2.
So I have to recuse myself from 4.2 due to a potential conflict. So that's why I pulled it.
Yes, I understand. Okay, I need a motion.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second that.
Thanks. I have a motion and a second to approve 4.2 with Dr. Kaiser abstaining. All those in favor? Ms. Dalby?
Dalby, aye.
Kaiser abstains. Mr. Tennis?
Tennis, aye.
Lando, aye.
Robinson, aye. Thank you. I know. Okay. Item number 10, discussion action calendar, educational services. We are going to go over the opening day updates for 21-22, Mr. Shepherd and Mr. Sullivan.
Yeah, I'll actually go through the slideshow, and if we have any questions for Mr. Shepherd and Mr. Sullivan, they will be here for you guys, and plus Mr. Vincent also, and Mr. Hanlon. Okay, so we're going to be going over our opening update. We like to do this every year to show you how our first week of school went, and I got some information to go through. They gave me a new clicker, so I'm hoping it works. It does. Then some of the things that I will be going over, it'll be the summer programs that we had, our staffing that we hired, professional development, enrollment, facilities and management, co- and extracurricular participation, technology, and safety protocols. Our summer programs, approximate participation. We had credit recovery. That was our high school credit recovery program. We had 385 students involved in that. Our TK5 summer sessions that the board approved through our ESSER dollars, we had over 1,200 students participate in that. Our kindergarten boot camp, we had 18 students participate in that. Our extended school year, our ESY, had 316 students involved in that. And then we had junior high early back, and we had 155 students participate in that. This is clearly the highest number of students that we've had during our summer programs. Obviously, the TK5 summer sessions with the 1,200 students was a big bonus for getting kids for the learning loss and getting them back on our campuses. New staffing, new to Chico Unified, our certificated staff. We had our largest amount of staff, I believe, at least in my time that I've been here. Normally, we would have 40 to 50 new hires for the school year. This year, we had 118 new hires. 118, and I just want to say, we talked about this at the opening professional development day. We had 116 out of 118 of those teachers show up for our new teacher training day. We had 2 days of that. I believe it's on the 9th and the 10th, or the 10th and 11th. It was 9th, 10th, and 11th. We had them, and they showed up in mass numbers, which was great. And I would like to thank Ms. Moretti. He provided lunch on the first day for all those new teachers, so thank you for that. Out of those 118, I just want to, again, this is one of the things that we decided, the board, was to add more counseling. So we added 17 more counselors to our staff this year. So again, they're all working, and we've been meeting with them. And actually, during the summer, we started meeting with them to go over the structure of our counseling and how we were going to use all the new counselors. And that's been a great thing for us, because it really got us back meeting with our counselors and the needs of our students. Classified staff, we hired 125 new classified staff, and that's June 1st of 21. I wanted to let you know too, along with that counseling, we increased the counseling assistance days. It was 160 before, and we increased them to 180 days. So they were on our campuses to help our elementary counselors and administrators to be ready to go on our campuses. Professional development, we had a curricular training, new teacher orientation, behavior supports, MTSS. Our big day was August 12th, Professional Development Day, where we had all of our teachers. We split them up between Marigold and PV. We had a main speaker. We had two main speakers groups that we had. It was Shadrach Boache was our guest speaker. He first talked to the secondary teachers in the morning, and then while the elementary teachers were doing their bias awareness training from a couple of our Butte College partners that led those trainings, and then we flip-flopped it. Then Shadrach talked to the elementary teachers next, and then our secondary teachers got their bias awareness training. The numbers you see up there, 4.7, 4.1, we surveyed all of our teachers after each one of those things to see how they thought that went, 1 being low and 5 being high. Shadrach was a big hit at 4.7, and the bias awareness training actually scored very high at 4.1, so they went really well. I want to do a shout out. I know he's in the back there with a little mic up, but Phil Morgan did an excellent job making sure that we had classrooms and facilities ready for that day. We had them spread out all over the place. So again, that's probably around 760 teachers that we had there that day, and we fed them breakfast and lunch, but they were all different classrooms here at Marigold and also Pleasant Valley. So Phil, thank you very much, because Phil had to do a lot of work on that and a lot of meetings with us, changing classrooms constantly on them, so I appreciate Phil on all your hard work on that. Oh, and Vince and Sarah with all the food, thank you. Providing all the food services, him and his crew were amazing, getting that food in there for breakfast and turning around and coming back and feeding everybody for lunch. So that was also a great big hit. Enrollment as of August 19th, I mean, you can see we have 5,191 elementary students and 6,725 secondary students and 242 other. So a total of 12,142. On that same date last year, we had 12,131. So we're right about the same. We will continue to look. We usually really sit down with Kevin and his crew and Jacqueline right after Labor Day to see we always say rear ends in the seats. We want to make sure that our kids have been showing up during those times, but that's our total as of August 19th for our enrollment. Facilities and maintenance. Some interesting things. We have on the left, that's a picture of one of our whisper rooms. That's the one that's at Sierra View. That basically gives you a silent room for our students and our counselors to meet with and talk with in a silent area. Also, construction at Citrus Preschool, Neil Dow, our wellness centers, and PV High School CTE facilities. So those are some of the things that are going on. PV, if you haven't been into that CTE facility, it's pretty darn, you can see the picture on the right. It's pretty amazing to look to see. We just had our co and extracurricular, we just had our web students and we had abundance of our link crew. I don't know if you've seen any of those pictures from the high school. It's an amazing amount of freshmen that were brought onto our campuses. And fall athletics, right now we estimated we about have 900 students participating in fall athletics. School site updates, this is our technology. This is John Vincent and his crew. ViewSonic touch-based panels will continue to be updated and installed. Our new phone system is on track. We also deployed another 4,500 new Chromebooks. Again, we have new students that are getting them, and we rotate them out every 4 years. So that's the 4,500 new Chromebooks. We also, John and his crew we're adding more into every classroom, so we had spares. It's a constant uptake for them to keep those things going. So I appreciate, John, you and your team at Marsh, at the computer lab over there doing the best they can to keep us up on site. Also, I want to give a shout out to John. It was Sunday, I believe, that he was saving our servers. Him and one of his colleagues, Justin, were down there making sure our servers were okay. And Kelly and I always kid because we said, hey, if you need our help, let us know. I was going to wipe the sweat off John's forehead, and Kelly was going to use the fan on him to make sure that he was cool, because that's about the extent of how we could have helped him. Support for our families, I just want to, again, this is our tech number. For our parents, our tech number is still available for parents to get support for if they're having any issues with their child's technology on our campuses. Again, that number is 530-801-2716 if they need to call into that number, and we can give their family support for our tech line. New this year, our safety protocols. We have a COVID reporting line now. Right now, we have one of our nurses running that. Poor Tina had to run it for the first couple days. I appreciate that, Tina. We have right now Debbie Campos manning that for families to call in to report different COVID situations so we can give them the information that they need on quarantine or days that they're going to have to be on our campus. We're also looking to have that person we're looking at hiring somebody full-time for that right now. We just have one of our nurses taking care of that until that happens. Face covering compliance. Right now, we are pleasantly surprised in how that is going. Our students have been amazing, and our staff and our teachers have been amazing in the classrooms and on our campuses. We've had very few of any situations that come up on the mask. We have people at different campuses, and again, it was just amazing. Kids are excited to be in class and have been wearing the mask and not having any issues with that at this time. I can go over the modified quarantine. That is a change. There's a couple different ways when a child is being quarantined. One, they can just take the 10 days and not have to get tested and stay home for the 10 days. If they've been vaccinated, they can go right back into the classroom and wear their masks as long as they're not showing any symptoms. On the modified quarantine, a little different is if the family, their child is not showing any symptoms, they can return to school, but they have to test 2 times during that 10 days to show that they are negative. It's on the 3rd day and the 7th day. I want to make sure I'm correct on that, Tina. Yes, she's looking at me, so I want to make sure that I'm saying these correctly. 3rd and 7th day, they just need to check in and make sure that they're not showing any symptoms, and they can go right back into the classroom. We've had families choose both those options. So, got any questions for me, John, Tina, Ted, John Vincent, John Shepherd?
Board members, do you have any questions? Yes, Ms. Dalby?
I wanted to ask if you had pictures of Kelly holding the fan while John was doing the work on the computers.
I would just like to thank John. He did not take us up on the help. He let us stay home on Sunday.
How many athletes? I missed.
We have 900 athletes right now participating.
900?
900.
Okay.
Approximately 900.
Yeah.
And just a reminder of the mask requirement is for in-school buildings.
Inside the classroom and inside buildings, yes.
So when any adults.
When students are present, yes.
Yeah, so when any adults are coming onto campuses, they don't have to wear a mask until they enter.
They get walk in, and we have started having volunteers come back, and they have to be matched just like the students do when they go inside the classroom.
Yeah, I would assume that everybody would assume during school hours that students would be in buildings, right?
Well, they have recesses, lunch, and passing periods at the secondary level, which they do not have to wear masks.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that in my experience at Marsh, for example, there's never any time of the day where I would enter a building and there wouldn't be a student present.
Correct, unless the teacher has a prep period.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, and that's my presentation. If no any questions.
I do want to just add that we have amazing kids, amazing staff, and amazing parents, and this has been one of our smoothest starts. The kids, I think, really truly missed being in school. They came in and they want to stay. They're there, they're excited. So thank you to all of our kids out there and our parents and absolutely our staff for setting that positive tone.
Do we have any public comment on this issue?
We do not.
We do not. Okay, this is for information only. There's no action needed. Mr. Shepherd?
Good evening. Thank you, President Robinson. So, as you can see in your packet, we are bringing an action item to you tonight to consider. Just to roll the camera back to a previous board meeting, we had a conversation about Assembly Bill 104 that included some ed codes related to learning recovery. And specifically, one of those ed codes, 49066.5, referenced 2020 and 21 students who are in the 9th and 12th grade could have their grades adjusted. And while we have had some students take us up on that offer, it's been well publicized. We've had pretty solid communication with parents and families. What we realized is some of the intent of the legislation, in our opinion, didn't cover some of the students that do need to be included in that process, in those criteria. Our incoming 9th grade class was not included in that AB 104 language. And we're asking the board to consider including them for 1 year only, for this past year only, and for a myriad of reasons. In rare cases, a grade adjustment could support a student's seal of biliteracy eligibility. In rare cases, it could support a student's A through G eligibility. In some cases, it could support a student's athletic eligibility. And then also for clubs, again, rare cases, but we don't really know yet because we haven't been able to do this, CJ, SF eligibility. So we're bringing this to the board tonight to consider and see if I can answer any questions about implications. Implementation, it would be a very similar process to what we used for AB 104.
Dr. Kaiser?
We had to consider this at the university level, and I was a little surprised at the number of faculty who were very concerned that letting students have a grade change to pass-fail was going to affect their futures. And what I found out was that the law schools were already doing it. So here was university faculty worrying about, quote-unquote, supposedly professional careers or grad school, and they had already moved ahead. So I think it is a very positive move that we know there was a tremendous amount of disruption to everybody's last year educational experience. And when you add the fires and all of that that we had to deal with. So I think it's a positive thing to do for this year of incoming freshmen.
Mr. Landau?
Thank you. One of the big issues with AB 104 was the very tight deadline they gave students for getting those grade switches. Do you have an idea of what kind of deadline you would look at once you start advertising this to parents and whatnot?
So the challenge here is that we want to ensure that we cover all kids and make sure we're clear with parents that we're going back a year. So we would like to take longer than 15 days. We'd actually like to have this go through September 30th if the board is agreeable. That would give us enough time. We would implement it as quickly as possible, knowing that there are some immediate implications. For example, athletic eligibility would be a pressing need to try to implement it as quickly as possible. But we feel like having a longer deadline would be beneficial for parents and students.
Yes, Ms. Dalby?
I have two questions. So just so that I'm clear, this was something that was offered for students who are already in 10 through 12, but just not the incoming freshman students?
Correct.
And then the second question is if and when the board approves this and we open that up until you said the end of September for...
That's our suggestion.
Right, your suggestion for end of September for freshman students, now freshman students. Would we open that back up again for all the students who had been eligible before, so everybody has the chance to rethink that decision and you know, have that a second opportunity to be able to change their mind if they have realized that that was not the right choice that they made before?
Unfortunately, while we'd love to be able to do that, believe me, the applications that have come in have been well supported. The legislation does not allow us to open back up the window that was related to AB 104.
Is there a corresponding resolution or anything? I don't see anything for us to approve other than the implications language here.
Yes. Frankly, we were just asking for this to go into the minutes for 1 year only. It would not be board policy. We would have procedure in place, much like AB 104, but it would not become board policy, which would then be supported by admin regulation. It would just be a decision by the board for 1 year only, as documented in our minutes.
Thank you. Do I have any questions for additional clarification from board members?
So just, so it's a 1-month time period for them to apply?
Mhm.
And it only applies to incoming freshmen?
Correct.
Okay, and everybody else prior has a potential of knowing about this and applying?
Mhm. Yes.
Do we have any public comment?
There's no public comment.
Do I have a motion associated with this request?
I would like to move that we pass the incoming freshman grade adjustment.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion by Dr. Kaiser, second by Member Dalby. Any further discussion, board? Okay, I'll call for the vote. Was our last vote unanimous? No. Okay, so we need a voice vote. Dalby?
Dalby, aye.
Tennis, aye.
Lando, aye.
Robinson, aye. Thank
Thank
you. Passes 5-0.
you.
Can we get a report back on the number of students who actually apply?
Absolutely. I'll report back. Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, we have from Business Services, the Local Control and Accountability Plan final revision. Stressing final.
Hopefully final.
And I would like to, let me get to the, one of the attachments, because it was noteworthy. There was a letter attached along with the notices for rechain for revisions that states that the okay, where is it? With many disruptions and changes in the Lcap process these last 2 years, as well as the completion of a brand-new Lcap template, many districts and county offices across the state are taking advantage of this Ed Code provision. With that in mind, the County Office of Education worked with Chico's administrations to provide clarification to the following sections that they're asking for adoption. They also state in the first paragraph that Chico's Lcap is one of the cleanest, most transparent, and student-focused that Butte County Office of Education received this year. And that didn't happen by accident. It happened because we have a team that works very hard to make sure that we're probably already started on next year's, but that the process, I see you smiling, that the process is done thoroughly and well. And I would like to say thank you, along with what Butte County Office of Education recognized. Okay, now you can present.
Good evening, Board. So before you this evening are revisions to our annual Lcap, or the Local Control and Accountability Plan. So this plan is brought forth every year in June, along with the next year's budget adopted by the board, and then submitted as part of their oversight. They then review this document and provide feedback related to compliance. So as Ms. Robinson said, we had a pretty clean Lcap this year with only basically 4 revisions. So I will speak to the fiscal components. There were 2 fiscal components that were marked incorrectly. So as a result, our total expenditures in the document increased slightly, as well as expenditures related to our increased and improved services. But what I do want to point out is those dollars were already included in the budget. So it was really just a formatting piece related to the Lcap. So those dollars have already been allocated for those services that will be performed this year.
We also had to add on the increased and improved services, research-based rationale for each of the actions. That's a perfect example of what was mentioned in that letter about the new template, not maybe being entirely clear at the time, but we've learned that, and we know that each action does require research connected to that or data connected to that, so we were able to do that. Is everybody hearing okay? Yeah? Okay, just want to make sure everybody can hear at the board. Also, the stakeholder engagement, one piece is additional there, and it is our consultation with Aaron Benton, who is from Butte County Office of Ed, and the SELPA with special education consultation. And then we had two very minor priority numbers to swap out. As you can see there, a 4 to a 7 and a 4 to an 8. So very minor, but wanted to make sure we did all of that as well.
So those were the changes.
Dr. Kaiser?
So direct certification is documentation that we receive from the state for students who are getting, let's say, state aid via, could be through food stamps or subsidized housing of that nature. So students who are, the families are already connected with the state and getting social services. So we get direct confirmation, our nutrition services department does, to say these students are automatically eligible for free or reduced. In those situations, those students don't have to fill out an application.
Okay, thank you. That really helps.
So this evening, we would just ask that you approve these small changes to our Lcap, and then we can be in compliance with BCOE.
Do you have any additional questions from the board? No, thank you. Once I found the the explanation that was only 6 sentences long, I was in much better shape. I was trying to find it in the full document. Do we have any public comment?
There's no public comment on this item.
Thank you. Do I have a motion? Ms. Dalby?
I move to approve the final revision of the local control and accountability plan for 21-22.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion, board? We're ready to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you, board. It's approved, 5-0.
No, 10 is opposed.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I did not hear that there was a non-response.
No worries.
I'm sorry. So we have a 4 yes, a 1 no. Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yes. Again, I don't know why this response is coming the way it is. Okay, our next is the 45-day budget revision for 21-22 school year. Mr. Baltima.
Yes, as a reminder, the timing of the state budget adoption doesn't always match up with the timing requirements for our local budget adoption. So typically we see material changes that are large enough that we think that you, the board, and the public should know about. We bring back a 45-day revision to that original budget. We are bringing that to you this evening. You'll notice it's on a different format than our traditional standardized accounting code structure format, but this format is approved by Butte County Office of Education and is provided as their template. The changes are fairly minor. As a reminder, at the time, we thought that we had a state budget, but there were trailer bills that were coming after the fact that we weren't sure what was going to be in those trailer bills. So that's what really is the change here. We did get the local control funding formula and the cost of living adjustment correct. The only adjustment to the LCFF was related to our unduplicated count percentage. Prior year was a little bit higher, to the tune of $112,000. So that unduplicated count percentage is what drove that additional dollars in the LCFF. You'll see additional revenues also in state and federal funds. Those are on the restricted side of the budget. And we budget not only for the increased revenue related to those grants, but also we budgeted to spend all of those dollars as well. Obviously, we will need to talk to Ed Services and talk about the details of how those dollars will be used. But for a budget standpoint, we budget both all revenue and all expenditures. Probably the biggest change is related to the unemployment insurance percentage. We had projected a 1.23%, and that is a very large increase compared to 0.05% that we'd been living with prior to the original budget. But the state put more money in offsetting the unemployment insurance percentage increase, and they dropped that down to 0.5. So although not back to the 0.05, it still was 0.5 less than the 1.23. On the unrestricted side of the budget, that had an improvement or reduction in expenditures of $448,088. And on the restricted side of the budget, $262,670,000. The rest of the changes, again, on the restricted side are related to those grant dollars on the expenditure side. And one of the more confusing things is we also saw improvements related to special ed funding through the AB 602 allocation from the county. So as a reminder, special ed dollars through AB 602 come into the county, and then there's an agreed upon allocation methodology that is adopted. That methodology actually provides more money to Chico Unified. So that does two things. One, it increases the revenue on the restricted side of the budget for special education, but it also then reduces our contribution on the unrestricted side of the budget. So you see a correlation increase in revenue on the restricted side, but then a reduction on the contribution from the unrestricted side of the budget. So it ultimately helps our unrestricted side of the budget. We've talked about this before. Additional dollars or expenditures in special ed have a direct, almost one-to-one correlation to the bottom line number on the unrestricted side of the budget. So with those changes, our projected change in fund balance on the unrestricted, it went from 3.8 million up to 5.195 million. And again, that is because our revenue is based on 2019-20 and not based on the enrollment in the 80, the enrollment number you heard earlier. The multi-year projection, I'd point to the board, we did have small deficit spending in the second and third year. With these revisions, we only see some deficit spending in the second year, very minor, and that's eliminated in the third. I would also point out that that's based on the same decline in enrollment that we had in our original budget. So we did not change any of the projections we had at the time for enrollment, because we just didn't know what those were going to be. If our numbers hold based on what was reported, although it doesn't get us back to where we were in 2019-20, so from a funding standpoint, we're still deficit. We have a deficit or a reduction in enrollment. It still is much improved compared to what we had projected for our MYP here. And if those numbers hold, and if we can project either less of a decline or flat enrollment, that will also help our multi-year projections substantially.
So, if I understand you correctly, we are currently reflecting what we projected in the way of the decline.
Correct.
If that decline doesn't happen and our current numbers hold, that will be an adjustment that we will go back in and make.
Yes, it'll be an improvement at first interim. We know that numbers typically do go down from the first week. However, and this is the one challenge that we're still dealing with, is you still need to go back to 2019-20, where our enrollment was 12,362. So when we report that we're at 12,152, that's still 200 down from that funding piece. So, we're not back to where we were in 2019-20, but it's not what we were projecting for our multi-year projection, so we get better in that look. So, overall, this is good news for Chico Unified. I think it puts us in a good position moving forward. And so we present this to the board for your approval.
Okay, any further discussion, questions from the board? Mr. Tennis, you have a questioning look on your face. No.
I'm just wondering how quickly I can make a motion to approve this recommended change.
You're almost there. Do we have any public comment? Thank you. Board, are there any motions associated with this agenda item?
I move that we adopt this recommended change.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Mr. Tennis and Dr. Kaiser. Any further discussion? Board.
Kevin, if you can't keep us in the money, we'll jerk you back, so.
There's a really good team that
Yes.
will do just that.
Okay, we need a vote by member identification. Ms. Dalby?
Dalby, aye.
Kaiser, aye.
Lando, aye.
Robinson, aye. 5-0. Thank you, Board. Thank you, Kevin. Okay. We have an exemption. Mr. Baltima, this is yours as well.
It is, just for the board and the public, we are required, if we are operating a school program in a facility that is not Field Act approved, that is, has not gone through the Department of State Architecture for their compliance, then we have the ability to do an exemption. That resolution is presented to you this evening related to our Oak Ridge program that is currently being operated out of the Chico Marketplace. And there is a requirement that we would do this again every 2 years. So one of the important pieces is that we can't have more than 25 students in the facility at any given time. You do see this type of exemption often with independent study programs where students are coming in for their one-on-one interaction with a teacher or even some small instruction, but you don't see an actual classroom or large educational programs where multiple kids are on the site. So we bring this for your approval for the current program, and if Oak Ridge finds another location at some point in time, we'd want to do that again for that location.
So it is facility specific in the way of the waiver request?
It is facility.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, Board, anyone else have any specific requests or clarification? Do we have any public comment? Thank you. Do we have a motion from the board relative to this agenda item?
I'll move to approve resolution 1549-21.
Thank you.
Second.
I have a motion from Member Dalby, a second by Dr. Kaiser. Any further discussion, Board? Okay, since the last vote was not unanimous, we will, oh, it was? Am I two votes away? Okay, thank you. I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, got it covered this time. That's 5-0. Thank you, Board. I'm going to just say it again. I am so enjoying this facility where you can see everybody that's here, and it just, this is wonderful. This is just wonderful. Yep. Okay, Mr. Hanlon, we have a motion to continue the increase in substitute teacher pay.
Yes, very briefly, as you recall, last year I came to you to increase the substitute pay in order to compete with surrounding districts. Regardless of how you look at it, fortunately or unfortunately, the surrounding districts have continued to keep their pay at a very high rate, and we've already seen some substitute teacher shortages, so I'm coming to the board again to extend that for this school year. Given the COVID situation, I expect that we're going to continue to see shortages, especially when we start requiring our subs to be vaccinated. That will cut down on the pool even further.
Members, do you have any questions for clarification? This is to just continue what we approved earlier.
Correct. Yeah,
Yes,
so
thank you.
the rates would be the same as we did after I came to you in November of last year to raise them to $175 and $200 a day.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment? Thank you. Do we have a motion associated with this agenda item?
Well, I'd like to ask a question first. So we did this hoping that it would increase our pool of substitute teachers, and is that happening?
Yes, it did. Last year, after you passed it, we ceased having shortages in our classrooms, so it was very effective.
Okay, good.
100% effective, in fact.
Great. Okay, any other questions, discussion? Okay, do I have a motion associated with this agenda item?
Move to approve.
Mr. Tennis, thank you. I'll second the motion. You guys are being way too slow. Any further discussion? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays? Thank you, that was unanimous. 5 no, 5 no. Ugh. Okay, the discussion action on the resolution to allow teachers with a multiple subject credential to teach a specific subject area below grade 9. Mr. Hanlon?
So I bring this to you each year, and essentially we have two types of teachers that teach outside their credentialed area, but they have to have a certain number of units as dictated by CTC in that area. So the two are, if you remember, a few years ago, we brought 6th graders up to the junior highs, and we have some teachers that are teaching specifically like math or English, but they have to have a minimum number of graduate units in those areas in order to teach that. So we're asking for that exemption. And the other one is teachers that have multiple subject credentials that are teaching fine arts in the elementary schools. So we have itinerant teachers that teach music and art, and they have also the same minimum number of units in those areas in order to teach. So we have to bring that, according to Education Code, to the board for approval each year.
Ms. Dalby?
I don't know if I'm remembering incorrectly, but when we did bring 6th graders up to the junior high campuses, wasn't there a time limit given to teachers to obtain those single subject or those secondary teaching credentials at some point?
No, what we did is we grandfathered those transfers in, but as those staff either left us or retired, all replacements had to be specifically credentialed in an area, so a subject area. So we, as you notice here, there's a lot of 6th grade teachers that came to us. You can look through here. There's only a handful left at this point. We're only 3 or 4 years into it. So the list has shrunk considerably. Some have chosen to go back to elementary. Some have retired. Some have resigned. So as the years go by, that should shrink down to 0.
Any further questions, board?
Well, they do have the courses, though.
Yes, and they do meet all the requirements of CTC. So they allow us to do this. It's just that the board has to be aware and publicly vote on the waiver.
Okay, do we have any public comment? Okay, thank you.
I would like to move resolution 1546-21.
Is there a second?
I'll second that, yes.
Thank you. I have a motion, Dr. Kaiser, a second by Member Landau. Any further discussion, board? Okay, call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's 5. Any nays?
I haven't voted. I'm actually pretty conflicted about this still. I guess it's something maybe to bring up at a later time when we're not in the middle of trying to vote for it, but I do feel like there needs to be a little bit more accountability to teachers who've been riding this wave for several years now. Just by experience of being a secondary teacher and knowing how sometimes it translates in the classroom and not having as much subject matter competency, to be able to support those teachers to obtain higher qualifications in the actual certification. So just maybe something to talk about at a later time, but I just wanted to, I didn't get to get that out in discussion. We jumped so fast into the vote. So anyway, I guess I'm gonna vote no, just out of philosophy, and it'll be what it is because it's otherwise unanimous.
Thank you. We have a 4 yes, 1 no. Thank you, Member Dalby. Okay. Next, this is also yours, Mr. Hanlon, the single subject class based on appropriate coursework.
So this is the counterpart to this at the secondary level. We have a handful of teachers that teach out of their credentialed area. For example, the first one, if you look on the list, is Mr. Alvester. He is the football coach, and he does a weightlifting class, but he's credentialed in social science. But he has the requisite units in order to teach that and be classified as PE. So sometimes teachers will teach outside that area, but according to CTC, are qualified to do so. So we have 4 teachers in all our secondary schools that are teaching at least one class outside their primary credentialed area. But they also have taken the units as required by CTC in order to do that. So we're asking approval of Resolution 1547-21.
Okay. This is Resolution 1547-21. I just want to make sure I have correctly identified our item.
The other one was 1546.
46, there we go. Mr. Hanlon, 1546-21 is where we are.
No.
So 1547-21. This is the
one we passed already.
That was that was where I thought we were. Okay. Any technical questions for clarification purposes from the board? Do we have any public comment? No public comment, thank you. Do we have any motions associated with this agenda item?
So I'd like to move 1547-21.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, call for the vote by member.
I do have just a comment. It's the same as the last item, and I just I'm not supportive still of the concept of extending people's special circumstances beyond a reasonable amount of time for them to obtain the proper credentials. So.
Thank you. Any further?
On that note, can you tell us roughly how long these teachers have been teaching outside their credential?
I don't recognize 3 of them. I just know that the first one that I mentioned has been doing that for a number of years because he has been the football coach for 10 or 12 years. So I will add in these. Sometimes, for example, like the health classes, it's a 1-semester class. So sometimes you have to have a teacher that, other than the one health teacher you have, pick up some extra semesters of health in order to make your schedule work. So they actually benefit the district as much as it benefits the teacher to be able to teach those classes that otherwise we may not be able to hire a part-time teacher. So,
I hear that. And
yeah.
Honestly, the health ones don't bother me so much, but I'm a social studies teacher. I'm a little concerned about someone who doesn't have as much subject competency.
So in that one, what I can speak to that is typically they have a history degree. They don't have a social science degree. So they can teach all of the social science classes except for government and econ. So they can teach world history, they can teach U.S. history and those types of things. So those are the classes that, because of the classes they've taken in college, those are the only things that they are qualified to teach. So those are not really teaching outside of the area of expertise.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and just to follow up, I am the opposite of Tom and take issue with the health teacher one because I'm very intimately familiar with the health subject matter and think that I've seen it taught by people who are not trained in health, and it's really sometimes could be a bad situation. So this is not a personal thing for this particular teacher. I don't know this teacher. I don't know their background or the credentials except for what I just Googled. But that's why I want us to maybe visit this concept in the future and maybe think about long-term requirements or assistance as a district to help them obtain the proper credentials in the future.
question, Mr. Hanlon. I have seen concerns with the health being taught by someone who didn't have that as a specific interest especially. But is there anything that we can do through in-service training or anything to assist the people that are not fully credentialed to teach health? Because that's an important subject that can be very difficult for someone that's not wanting that specific area of instruction, shall we say?
Yeah, right. We are not requiring them to teach. They are typically physical education teachers. There's a lot of overlap to some degree in those classes. They have to take additional classes in order to meet the requirements for the supplemental credential. And it is not mandatory. It's a volunteer type of a thing. So these are teachers that have volunteered to do so and have taken or have even gone out of their way to take summer classes in order to teach those classes. So it's not a situation where they're being mandated to take those classes in order to teach them. Yeah.
That wasn't my concern. My concern was just, I believe, is what Member Dalby was saying. It's just the level of competence. And it's a very important subject area. And, okay, thank you. Any public comment? Did you have a question?
I have another comment. I mean, how would this philosophically relate to the fact that we're allowing students to change their grades based on the convenience of the pandemic? I don't know if these staff recommendations, if that's what they are pandemic related at all, or this is just the normal course of non-availability of, desired staff.
This is typical. I come to the board every year for a handful of these exceptions.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's important, though, too, to point out that they have had the coursework.
Correct.
They didn't do a degree certificate in that particular area. So.
Yeah, I can counter that with, well, maybe we should wait till discussion.
Okay, do I have, I asked for public comment, correct? Okay. Do I have any motions?
You already had a motion.
Huh?
We didn't?
No.
Oh, we did. I'm sorry.
At least I don't think so. Do I have a motion?
I thought I moved it. 1547-21.
Erica might be validating you. So we are in discussion.
Can't hear her.
We can't hear Erica.
So 1547, motioned by Kaiser, seconded by Timmis.
I remember now because there was a long pause. Now I remember.
Yeah.
In my experience teaching health-related subjects, having a course in health, and I've had courses in health, having a course in health doesn't translate into being able to teach it appropriately to students because it's a very sensitive subject. So I acknowledge the coursework, but I also, I would like to know that teachers that are teaching the topic, and this is a bigger discussion for another time to look at our health programs, our health education programs in general, is definitely on my list of things to do. But yeah, that's what I would say is it takes more than just coursework to effectively teach health to our students.
Mr. Landau?
I was going to say that I share those concerns, and I think that's a really an important conversation to have about why it is that health basically is getting the short end of the stick to find someone to cover it effectively. That is an important topic. I am going to be voting yes on this to make sure our schedule is smooth for this year, but it is a conversation we should have.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Jim, what's the minimum amount of coursework that someone would need to be able to teach a single subject class?
I believe it's 12 units.
12?
12.
12 units.
So upper level units.
So 18 units would be a minor in most cases.
Just to give the board a little more background, there's not a lot of health teachers because there's not a lot of health jobs. You typically, in one of our high schools, you might have one health teacher because it's only a semester class and you're teaching primarily freshmen. So, typically, they'll have a credential and a supplement, or they'll have 2 credentials. So it's not necessarily, when you open up a position, if it's part-time, you're probably not going to get candidates.
Yeah.
You have to have a full-time job or they'll go somewhere else.
But
So-
there is a supplementary credential or a supplement for health that, you know, somebody more of like a science teacher would be able to obtain pretty easily.
There is through 9th grade, but if the 9th graders don't take it and you have 10th, 11th, and 12th, you can't teach those. And that's why we're coming to you.
You can't teach it with a supplement?
Not above 9th grade.
Not above 9th grade. Got it. You have to have the full credential above 9th grade.
Or I need to come to you.
Or the
Yeah.
exemption,
Yeah.
or however it's called, sorry.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So there's challenges that are beyond just
Right.
getting
So
that
the issue
credentialed
that I
person.
like currently have would be a PE teacher having that exemption to teach that to 10th, 11th, and 12th graders.
Correct.
I'm also a little bit biased because I'm a science teacher and I have a depth of knowledge of science, so it's a little bit different than from the physical education perspective, which is related to health also. It just doesn't go into a lot of the more psychological parts of it.
Any further discussion, board? Are we?
I just want to
Mr.
know how many of you guys had this pegged as the hot discussion item of the day.
I did not.
Okay, all those in favor of passing 1547-21 signify by saying aye.
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 Was that
Any-
It's a voice vote. Dalby, nay.
Yeah, I was going to call for any nays. Was the last one
No,
not
it's a voice
unanimous?
vote because we were not unanimous last time.
Thank you. Dalby, I'm going to call again for the vote. Dalby?
Dalby, nay.
Kaiser?
Yes.
Tennis eye.
Lando, aye.
Robinson, aye. 4-1. And you heard our concerns.
Yes.
Thank you. And they've been there for a while. I've attended several meetings on this very subject. Okay, next one, number 4, discussion action. Mr. Hanlon again, the declaration need for fully qualified educators.
So you actually passed this back in June, and there is one change on this document, and it's because we have hired a number of interns, and CTC requires us to have, for each teacher to have a CLAD credential, which allows them to teach English language learners, which are in nearly all of our classes. And when you're an intern, you haven't gotten that credential yet. So we waive that for their first year or possibly 2, depending on how long it takes them to get their credential. And but that is a requirement in order to get your primary credential. So eventually they do get that, but we're waiving it until they can actually go through the classes and get that credential. So that's where we're at. So what we've done on this one, the number has changed. I think we had to add another 3 hires that are interns that are not CLAD credentialed, and that has to be documented and submitted to the Commission on Teacher Credentialing.
It's a little difficult to understand. Are you saying interns?
Interns, so if we open a position and we can't find a qualified candidate, we'll take a student teacher and then we will make them an intern, and they're actually paid on
Okay.
a salary schedule. So yes, they're an intern.
What's going on?
Oh, wait, it's a motion sensor.
We need our audience members
Yeah,
to do
you
some
guys need to
jumping
go out
jacks
and
every
do
few
jumping
minutes.
jacks and move around a lot out there.
Yeah. Or tell Phil to go fix it. There we go.
There you go. Like a lighter would be better in some ways, but maybe that's not, fire code.
Did you have a class on that, Jim?
Yes,
I have some questions on this item.
yes.
So I'm new to the whole world of teacher credentialing and this kind of stuff, but If you have somebody who, there's different levels of qualifications of teachers, right? You mentioned interns. Then there's a fully credentialed teacher, right? Who, if they wanted this job and they're already it would automatically be theirs if they didn't have somewhere else to be, right? So maybe two ends of the spectrum of who's eligible to come apply for this job. Is that
correct?
Maybe kind of accurate? And then there's degrees to which somebody is tenured or credentialed or something like that, or you've either got a credential or you don't. Maybe it's in that subject area, maybe it's in a different subject area. But who else is on that spectrum of who should get the job offer, you know, by law or whatever, according to the contract?
So we have teachers that are on emergency credentials.
That are what?
Sometimes on an emergency credential.
Okay.
And that is the most needy category. And typically, they're special education because we cannot find folks.
You said the most needy category?
Well, the most needy because we can go out and we advertise and they're not out there. There's just no one to hire. And a lot of school districts are in that position in special education, mathematics, and science, the sciences. For us in Chico, it's almost entirely special education, especially when you're trying to hire a special education teacher in August. And we've had to do a few of those.
They're not there.
They're just not there. So that's when we turn to an intern. And I think nearly all of, if not all of them, all our interns are in the special education classrooms because there just is no one to hire. They all have jobs. It's a very difficult job and districts gobble them up. So anywhere from an intern, then you can get someone just fresh out of college and they have a temporary credential. They have to go through something called an induction program. And once they pass that, then they can get their permanent credential. And then they just renew that every 5 years. So it could be any of those levels there. Right, and then the tenure is kind of a different issue because you have the first year and then till March of the second year to make a decision on whether that teacher is going to become permanent or not. And but in the meantime, they're expected to continue to make progress on their clear credential, and that could take up to 5 years. It just depends. They have 5 years from their first job to get their clear credential and finish that induction program.
So tenure actually kind of begins even before you get your clear credential. Is that what I just heard you say?
It could potentially. So we've had folks that that don't start the induction program in their first year out of college. They put it off for a year or two, but they have to have it completed by year 5. And so conceivably they could get tenure before that, but if they don't get their clear credential, the tenure doesn't protect them. They have to get their clear credential.
And do these people?
But they have a credential, yeah. It's just not cleared because they didn't go through the induction
Do these
program.
people get a crack at these jobs before when they become available? This what we're voting on here is a declaration that we have a need for a fully qualified person. Are we ruling out everybody else who's on that spectrum?
I'm not sure I understand.
Like the people these categories of people with these provisional,
the interns?
The interns, the provisional credential, right? Is that the first 2 years of your credential?
It's a preliminary credential.
Preliminary, sorry.
Yeah.
Are those people hanging around when we make this declaration and we're not hiring them, or?
No, there's none.
They're not available.
We're not even allowed to get an intern unless we've gone out, searched, and can't get a qualified candidate. So
Okay.
then are we allowed to place an intern in the classroom. So we have to show that we've gone out and advertised and tried to get those candidates.
Now, we know that's not entirely true, because it did happen last year, that an intern was hired over qualified credentialed candidates.
I'm not familiar with that situation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Maybe Jim makes it clearer, isn't this something that we have to do to say that we are looking for fully qualified educators in particular areas? That's why we're saying we have a declared need.
Yes, yes. That's correct.
Any other questions, board? Do we have any public comment? We have none?
Actually, just a really quick, just recap question. We already voted on this, just the numbers changed a little bit because we
Right.
have a different need.
We had a couple special education teachers leave us, and we're unable to hire any, so we were able to have interns fill those positions, so that's the reason. In August, it's nearly impossible to hire a special education teacher,
Okay.
unless they happen to move into Chico, on a whim.
Yeah, most of them are definitely already picked up by the.
Right.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to wrap my head around what's all that we have already done and what's needed.
Yes.
Okay, do I have a motion associated with this agenda item?
I would move 3.4, excuse me,
4.
3.4.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion, board? Okay, call for a vote. Member Dalby?
Dalby, aye.
Kaiser, aye.
Tennis, aye.
Lando, aye.
Robinson, aye. 5-0. Thank you, board. Okay, we're done with the personnel stuff. This is a board responsibility to ourselves to work to evaluate ourselves and our effectiveness and concerns. When this was presented at the last meeting, it was the first time many members had seen the compiled evaluation, and so we delayed commenting until this meeting. So we're now to the board self-evaluation score sheet to see if there are any comments on the section, the board where there was a score less than 3, I believe was our cutoff, asking for further explanation and discussion. Is there any discussion by any board member on those items on that list? Yes, Mr. Tennis.
I see honesty in this.
I'm sorry, you see what?
I see honesty in it. I think we've done a good job. I think that it's not all rainbows and unicorns, and it's not an artificially rosy view of our performance. There's some 2.6s as a 2.5, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. Any other comments, board?
Yeah, I'll echo that actually, and just also add that it demonstrates our willingness to be transparent in how we are governing, and being realistic about how we are as a board and as a group. And it gives us those particular items to pay special attention to, while we know what's going reasonably well and where we're not doing so well. When we have our professional development workshops together, we can spend that time to really work on those pieces in our relationship building and in our for the future, or as we move through into the future. So I appreciated this process also, just for that ability to think on, as an individual, but really because we govern as a group, not individuals. I thought that was a very healthy and transparent take on where we're at right now, especially in a first year with 2 brand new board members.
Any other comments?
Sorry, you go. I was reflecting on transparency and getting input, and I feel like it would be interesting to have gotten Ed Services also like input or from their perspective how we are doing as a group. I don't know if that's something that's normal or typical or what, but it would be.
Those comments do exist. If you want to go back to our backup materials on Superintendent Staley's self-evaluation, there's about 6 sheets of comments, and some of them do come from Ed Services and others about board performance, as a matter of fact. And they're quite interesting. And I appreciated that those comments were made. I would like to comment on number 9 here, provide community leadership on educational issues and advocate on behalf of students and public education at the local and state and federal levels. Why this is of interest to me is because I have a frustration that we have not done a good job of giving a broad base and a deep dive into the issues that weigh on our district and our board and our processes, to the point where any parent or any public person has an understanding of, you know, what goes into a lot of the background and things behind our decisions. And I believe that it's because of that there is so much perceived lack of total support. Well, total support, you don't ever want total support, that's not healthy. But lack of understanding and support of what's being done, because there's not a great deal of understanding of why things are being done, whether they're mandated or whether they're, have a lot of work and background to support them and bring them forward. It's just frustrating to me that there's not a lot of understanding of why we do some of what we do. And I don't know how to solve that problem. I just don't know, because the average person, parent, they don't have the time to spend to get into the depth that we have to do, or the people that are advising us have to do. And so that's a frustration level for me.
Can I respond to that, Madam President?
Yes.
I don't agree with what you said at all. I think they have a clearer understanding of what they need than we do, much of the time. And it's going to come to no secret to anybody here, that I was incredibly frustrated with I think, ambivalence and frankly disdain of this board toward the parents. I didn't come here tonight intending to make that speech at all. This is just, I'm responding to what you said. I doubt we have much of an audience tonight. It's not a very dramatic agenda. I'm just saying how I feel about it. How I feel is that we weren't there for the community like we should have been. That's just how I think. And I heard a lot of parents, and I saw a lot of comments, an overwhelming majority, who thought that we should have made decisions that were different from what we did, and we just ignored them collectively. So that's how I feel.
Did you want to respond to that, or?
Right now, I can wait.
Okay. So in one way, I can relate to what Matt's saying about previous board and how things went last year. And I think that he and I probably both have this in common, and that's why we ran for school board this year, because of the way we saw things being governed at the beginning of the pandemic and at the beginning of the school year last year. However, I do want to just acknowledge that there is a faction, and whether it's a majority or not, I think is still more or less a mystery, because we see what we look for. And so you might see a majority because that's the people who are reaching out to you, but I see a majority on the other side, and it's quite interesting that we have different perspectives, and because we hear from different groups of people. And so I'm never going to presume that, you know, any particular group is definitely the majority unless we actually have quantitative verified data. However, I would also add that all of their voices are important. And I think that as a board, it's important for us to acknowledge all of those perspectives and wants and needs and concerns, and be as transparent as possible, which is why I think it's great when we do our discussion, we ask the questions that we might already know the answer to, but just so that the public can hear our decision-making process and where we're coming from when we do make a vote. And so I would just encourage us to keep doing that. It might make our meetings go a little longer, but it is our duty to express why we're making the decisions that we're making that do have an impact on many people in this community, not just our students and staff, but really the community at large.
Any other members?
Well, it is very difficult for someone to know whether they're quote-unquote speaking for the majority, because we cover 588 square miles. So most of us have exposure to a particular segment of people. And I think it's really going to make the mandated separation of voting for trustees into quote-unquote neighborhood defined by census, but the same relative number of people. So that was initially done as a way to achieve a racial ethnic representational framework of reference, but it could, and this would be to me really unfortunate, it could put people in very extreme positions based on what they perceive to be their assigned district, you know. And just for example, right now, the intensity of the argument about setting up a water district that's going on, and that has state mandates about saving water, but it also has some very strong political and economic representational issues. So I think it's possible we could fall into that with this mandate to be in districts that are organized supposedly around particular representation that might not function in that way in our area. So it'll make some of these things that you are both bringing up perhaps even be more pointed.
I think I get frustrated with the comment that that I'm not listening, that I'm not paying attention to what parents are saying. And I read every single email comment sent to me, every single one. I respond to a lot of them and have back and forth dialogue with them. There is no discount of what people have to say that may not agree with other things that I hear about a particular issue. in the end, it's my responsibility as a board member to do what I believe is in the best interest of a majority of our students and is lawful. There's that component too. We have a fiduciary responsibility to act within the law. And I take that very seriously too. But to be accused of not listening to people that are expressing an opinion, that's just not true. I may not vote in favor of whatever their opinion is, but they have been heard. And I do a lot of independent reading and stuff outside of what comes to me through my regular school board stuff. So I expand my horizons as far as information. But in the end, I have to vote for what I think, what has been shown to me to be in the best interest of our kiddos that we're responsible for and what is lawful. Any other input or discussion? Okay, this is, these materials are filed as part of our process this year as the board's self-evaluation. Stays with us and until we clean out our closets 10 years from now. Oh, I just went through purging again. It's a valuable process because if we don't stop and take a collective look at what we're doing, we're not going to grow. We're just, it's an important process. May not be comfortable, but it's important. Anything else, board? Okay, I think we're done with this. It's not an action. Why does it say announce votes? We don't have to approve what we've done. We just
No, we
accept.
put this as a discussion action item in case the board wanted to set any action items for themselves. They could do that moving forward, but you don't.
Got it.
It does not have to be approved as is.
Do we have any bright ideas about how to do this differently that we'd like to put in writing and make part of our process for next year? Or one of the things that I think we talked about before was we are about to go to a California School Boards Association conference. And there are many good trainings and roundtables with other school board members throughout the state to sit down and pick their brains and their process results. And so we're headed for some good in-service. Okay, our next thing should be real close to asking if anybody has anything for the
Items
next.
from the floor?
Oh, items from the floor.
We have no items from the floor?
Other than a really beautiful M in the middle of this floor. This is just a beautiful facility. Okay, board member requests to agendize items for the future. Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
I think we're adjourned, board. Is it still light outside?
Yep, I see
Oh, yay.
We can even see outside now.
Yeah.
I know, the moon was white and the